Okay, we are back. All right. We are going to go now and say a very good morning here to Bruno Mercocchio. Good morning, Bruno.
Good morning, Randy. How are you today?
Not bad, fella. How are you?
Good, good. I'd like to weigh in today on the discussion that you had with the chief from Natwashish to begin with. You described yourself as a native Newfoundlander and him as an indigenous Newfoundlander.
When was this?
Oh, about a week and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
You recall the conversation?
I don't. The chief from Natwashish.
From Davis, the former Davis Inlet?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you had a conversation with him, I'm virtually certain, where you described yourself as a native Newfoundlander and him an indigenous Newfoundlander. And I think that
I would take that as being true. Okay.
To understand this issue, it's important, Randy, to put the question in a historical perspective.
Right.
Newfoundland was colonized by Europeans to exploit the rich resources that sustained indigenous populations there for millennia. The poor, largely Irish settlers were kept for centuries virtual feudal serfs. Until 80 or so years ago, Newfoundland and Labrador was virtually a cashless society with salt cod as the de facto currency.
Mm-hmm.
This allowed the merchants to exploit rural Newfoundlanders, keep them poor and virtually indentured.
Mm-hmm.
The merchants kept the price of fish low enough to ensure that the harvesters was left with no choices, no wealth, and no social mobility.
Yeah, but Bruno, okay, let's do something here, just very quickly, because we should jump ahead.
Yes, sir.
We know the history.
Yes.
All right, so go to your point.
Well,
the preamble piece I got. We know the history. We know what happened. You're right.
Meanwhile, the indigenous population was ethnically cleansed by the European occupiers.
Oh, that's a nice way to term it, ethnically cleansed. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Exterminated.
Yeah, they were.
In Labrador, the indigenous populations were forced onto reserves. They're called townships in other countries like South Africa, Randy.
Yeah.
With the help of European religious organizations, the occupiers implemented a policy to destroy the indigenous culture.
Yes.
They were deprived of their children, who were put in residential schools where their language, culture, and sense of self-worth was, as indigenous peoples, was undermined.
It was one of the most horrendous pieces of bad public policy that you could ever come up with. But I think the people at the time thought they were doing the right thing by saying we need to assimilate these folks.
Well, no doubt.
It was a huge mistake, grossly inhumane, really, and unfair, and a price is being paid for it, and rightly so.
Yes. They've got another name for those residential schools in other parts of the world. They're more aptly called concentration camps, Randy. In these schools, Randy, they were often sexually abused as well as emotionally and culturally abused. It's now widely understood that this kind of thing results in substance abuse in the victims, and often the abused become abusers. The effects, moral decay, despair, cascades down through the generations from the deliberate and willful destruction of a harmonious, sustainable civilization, Randy.
All right, it's a great article you're reading.
I'm not reading an article.
I understand that, but you got to get to your point because, like I said, the history we know.
All right. Davis Inlet in Natwashish is a classic example of this. An arrogant mayor of an arrogant community can ask, when's enough when a few basic community amenities are provided to a community ravaged from cultural and moral collapse induced by the willful subjugation by the colonial occupiers?
Oh, I see. So your point is I was arrogant.
Well, it struck me that way.
Why? Because I dared to question it?
Well,
we got a community of 800 people. I don't care if they've got 3 eyes. Forget about the fact they're Aboriginal. I don't care if they've got 3 eyes or 4 legs or fine, pink, white, red. But when we're shelling out in less than 36 months, $22 million, and none of that money is used to sustain the community, the federal government is using my other tax money to do that piece. I don't think it's arrogant. I think it's justified to ask the question, where the hell is the money going and why are you still in the state you're in?
It's funny, Randy, but when the mayor of a municipality that's
Don't go talking about me as the mayor of a municipality. One has nothing to do with the other, Bruno. Give that crap up.
All right, but I'm talking generically, Randy.
No, you're not talking generically, Bruno. No, you're not. You're talking about Randy Sims, host of Open Line, who happens to be the mayor of a community, and you thought he was arrogant because he challenged the native community on how they're spending their money.
Well, when a community that's got every cultural, educational, and technical advantage gets $6 million in additional funding for road construction, Randy, it's business as usual. When Natwashish, that has inadequate resources to deal with the outcomes of these colonial subjugation. They're told when is enough is enough.
Why do they have inadequate? Tell me that. Tell me, why do they have inadequate education? Why do they have inadequate health care? Why do they have inadequate policing? You tell me, why do they have that?
I find that attitude shocking, and I can't address it. I'd like to talk.
Whoa, stop! Why can't you address it? Why is that attitude shocking?
Well, because if you're suggesting that Netwashish has the advantages, the cultural, social, educational opportunities, the social mobility that others in the parts of the province have, and that they have that they have enough resources to deal with
Bruno,
moral collapse, induced
Bruno, you got it backwards. You got it backwards. I'm not asking that at all. I'm not stating that at all. I'm saying the same thing you are. They don't have it. They don't have it.
Okay.
And what I'm challenging,
right. I'm glad
my challenge is, after all of this time, why don't they? After all of this time, surely there comes a point at which, I'm sorry, right? But I'm not prepared to wear the guilt of my European ancestors for another 400 years. Come on.
Well, I agree, but at the same time, it's insulting to call yourself a native Newfoundlander. Let's look at this issue.
Why is it insulting to call myself a native I was born here.
Well, for these reasons that I'm trying to point out to you, the colonial history and the implications of that. Let's look at this
colonial
issue.
History and the implications. The colonial history and the implications of that in the year 2012 is a load of horse dung, and you know that.
Well,
if you take a community of people, 500 or 600 strong, and literally a generation ago, you moved them out of that hellhole we'll call Davis Inlet, and you build them a brand new community. You build them. You shell out $183 million to do that. You cover all of the community's expenses for over a decade. Then you turn around and you start pumping money into them because they are holders of the land. Fair enough. They're getting millions and millions of dollars flowing into their coffers from Boise's Bay. Fair enough. I'm not saying they should be denied the money. But at the end of that process, when the chief is sending you a copy of their accounting statement, and you're saying, hang on, they're sending people up to St. Anne de Beaupré, they're building supposed cabins that aren't being built, there's $22 million gone in 36 months, and and then somebody says, well, we don't have enough social workers. What? Tell me where that's wrong, Bruno. I'm sorry. If that's arrogant, then I don't wish to be arrogant, but I am being forceful.
Well, I've outlined that they don't have the resources to deal with the social and cultural problems induced by the colonial subjugation. But I want to talk about
that's a nice
Indians.
Yeah, that's a nice buzzword to say. It all goes back to 300 years ago. Give me a break.
Let me finish. Let me finish, Randy, and we'll explore that further. The issue of this blue-eyed Indians that's been coming up, I find truly repulsive. First of all, the white is right, red is dead attitude immediately reveals a racist bias. There are Sami indigenous people in the north of Europe that are fair-skinned, blonde-haired, and blue-eyed. People that are reconnecting to their...
Yeah, but they're not here.
Yeah, all right. People that are reconnecting to their culture, denied and beaten out of them for generations, should be celebrated, not abused, Randy.
Well, I got to tell you, I totally agree with you. I just totally agree. I talked to an Aboriginal man this morning. Out of Mount Pearl.
Yes.
And, he is a status Indian. Yeah, he's part of the Halapu band nation. And he's had the vote in the Halapu election and so on, everything like that. Now, it doesn't bother me and it doesn't bother him, the fact that his connection to the Mohawk or Mi'kmaq or any other native group is so tenuous that, quite frankly, he knows little of it. Like he said, his name is O'Leary. And he knows that he's getting an opportunity to take advantage of a circumstance. He knows that existed as a result of what happened with his great-great-grandfather and his great-great-grandmother. Back all of those, as I said to him this morning, an accident of history. The kind of fact that he's here and can make that claim for status. My argument to him this morning would be my argument to you is that these people then today who have this status, I'm not saying they should be denied it. I think they have an obligation, though, if they're going to claim it, to help move our First Nations forward. I think they really, because they are
Well,
blonde-haired and blue-eyed. They've got a little further positive, not a negative outcome from all of this.
Well, I think it's a sign that the healing has begun. I agree with you. When people begin to regain pride in their heritage and culture, the nearly non-existent benefits that are accrued to the new Halibu band are insignificant and can't be the reason for
You're reading to me again. Why do you always read to me?
Well, let me make my point. It's insignificant and can't be the reason for the venom directed towards people that want to seek recognition of their heritage. Why is the developing pride in indigenous heritage so threatening to the sons of these colonial occupiers?
There wasn't, and certainly on my part there wasn't. There was no venom directed. There was absolute jealousy.
There's lots of venom been come across, not from you, Randy, but on your program towards these blue-eyed Indians, as they're called. Let's look for a moment on how the colonials have managed.
The venom though doesn't stand from racism. The venom is not dealing with racism. The venom is dealing with how public officials use our tax dollars. And the issue is some guy who has, I mean, that's the challenge, right? Some guy who's never been involved with the Mi'kmaq culture, nature, or anything else finds out that his wife or he, through, as I say, an accident of nature, finds out that all of a sudden, oh God, look, I'm a 1/8 Indian or whatever. I have enough to qualify for this status. And now I'm going to receive a whole bunch of benefits, compliments of the Canadian taxpayer that, you know what, I've never been native, didn't know about, wasn't a part of, not really involved with, but hey, I'm on my way to Conn River to get my tax-free truck. That's not somebody picking on a particular Aboriginal group. That's somebody called a taxpayer picking on how people are using our tax dollars at the federal level.
Well, it ignores the history, and the indigenous rights. Let's look at the colonial government's history.
All right, you got 30 seconds. We got to sum up.
The colonial government of Newfoundland has the distinction less than a century ago, Randy, of becoming the only sovereign nation to give up its independence because it went broke mismanaging that feudal economy. The merchant class prospered, the masses did without and starved.
Well, we know that history.
It also managed in Newfoundland, ignoring the sage advice of eminent Newfoundlanders like Leslie Harris, that fish stocks were on the verge of collapse and needed a reduction in effort, destroyed the most productive ecosystem on the face of the planet, the Northern Cod Complex, Randy. For centuries, sustainable yields of hundreds of thousands of tons to a marine desert.
Bruno, I got to tell you, I got to tell you, based on what you've said to me, right?
Yeah.
Right. I have a real problem with you as a mainlander displaying here your arrogance and pretending you know a lot about our history and coming to the conclusion that really what's going on here and the problems we face is directly related to Newfoundlanders being stupid. I find that particularly personally insulting.
That's not what I said.
Well, of course, it's what you just said, isn't it?
Occupiers are not native Newfoundlanders, is what I said. They have a sorry history to atone for, both to their own culture and especially to the true native.
I gotta go to break. I am a native Newfoundlander. You're right about our having to atone for the sins of our fathers. Atonement is over. We have done it. Now it's time for people to move on.
I disagree. Enough will be enough, Randy, when they have all the cultural, social, financial opportunities that Mount Pearl does. How they define their cultural identity going forward is their business alone.
You have a nice Bruno. They do have. All the opportunity. In fact, they have more opportunities to advance their community at a broader level, more significantly, than Mount Pearl or Gander or Clarenville or Grand Falls, Windsor could ever dream of. That's part of the challenge, my friend. I got to go on that note, Bruno.
But just let me finish.
No, I got to go.
Just one sentence.
Because I got the last word here. Always, you know that.
It's my hope that they embrace much of what they spoke to.
So did mine too.
The interconnectedness of all life and people on the planet. But it's not my business is the point, Randy, and it's not yours neither to decide what they should do with their culture going forward.
I'm not deciding what they should do with their culture.
The subjugating colonial culture or their own native culture.
Bruno, listen to me.
Attached to it.
Bruno, I got to run. Bruno, I got to run. It's great fight. Got to run. It is not my business to decide what they're going to do culturally, Bruno. You're absolutely right. They do not have the right to independently and without any accountability and with impunity spend my tax dollar and then look at me and say because I'm a native. It's not your business to know what I did with it. That's all I'm saying.